morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg and it is the 8th day of January 2024 and welcome to our show today. Today we welcome you into Liberty Essentials with Bill Mohr, Ralph the IT guy, and Karen the Riveter. And we're going to be talking about the DNR today and the actions that they've been taking. Now, I think we're just going to get right into it because I could put some more comments into this, but guess what? We're just going to bring hail the gangs all here. How you guys doing?
Good morning.
Good morning. We're back. It's Wednesday. I'm excited.
Yes, we're back on Wednesday talking about all things constitutional and liberty and all the things that are going not quite according to plan, according to what the founding fathers had envisioned. So
starting off with the DNR, the do not resuscitate, right?
There you go.
That's one of those bad dad jokes that's also cute and annoying at the same time.
And fitting for that agency.
That's true for all of them. They should all be DNR'd because they're all unconstitutional. And I did put this in my last video on TikTok this morning, that there's in fact a case out there, Norton versus Shelby County, which basically says that they should all be, they don't exist. It's not just that they don't have the right to exist, that they don't exist. It is not allowable, and that all of them should be abolished. And this probably one of the quickest ways to go back to local control is start nullification of these bureaucracies and abolish them. And it can be done by the stroke of a pen because the precedent is already there. And Judge Cannon even quoted, which surprised me because several of us knew about this case, the case law beforehand, but she quoted it in the latest decision, or one of the latest decisions, that with the usurpers were going after President Trump, the rightful president of the United States. She actually quoted it and reaffirmed its relevance just recently within the last probably 4 months, which is amazing.
Yep.
Because the law is on our side. We just have to stick with it. And as long as nobody goes into crazy land and starts doing stupid stuff, we have the law on our side.
Kind of like Schrodinger's DNR. They exist and don't exist at the same time.
Well, they only exist because we agree to it. It's just like the unlawful taxation that we have. The only reason why any of this stuff continues on is because we allow it. And we're allowing people to stay in office right now because the voting's so rigged. The elections are completely rigged. We don't have elections. We have selections and the illusion of an election. And the political parties are part of the problem. They are where all of the steering on the ground of people, of American citizens, that's where most of the steering into exactly what they want us to do. The political parties are working just as hard as fake news is right now to subvert the United States, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of people that have gotten into the parties that are trying to do the right thing. And, you know, I would be hypocritical to say that that's not the case because I am the vice chair of the Constitution Party, the U.S. Taxpayers Party in the state of Michigan. Bill's the chairman. And we got in because we do have ballot access. And sometimes when you're in a war, we grab all available tools that are currently working in order to fight against it. I mean, like if you're in a war and you go into a town and you see assets there that can help with a cause, you're absolutely going to use whatever you have at hand to MacGyver your way through to win the goal without, of course, breaking the law. But you're going to use the available methods that you have. But quite honestly, we have such a large problem that the fundamental changes are going to have to be they're going to be shocking to everyone, but it is the only way out of this. You cannot continue to vote people in that have been selected to give us the illusion of having an election and running the country as a constitutional republic without some incredibly huge and to the point changes. I don't even know the word to say it without sounding like a radical American, but I guess I kind of am, because we're going to have to go back to nullification of all of these oversight agencies. They don't exist. The taxation structures don't exist. And don't give me this axe my tax bullshit that's going on out there, because that's another one of those strategies that's just to tickle the ears of everyone that says, oh no, don't like taxes, let's get rid of taxes. Really? What are you going to do to cut spending unless there's a spending reduction or a cut spending plan to go alongside of it? They're just going to move this tax to this tax. It's only going to be a reallocation. There's no plan with Axe My Tax. There was no response to the Constitution Party, the Taxpayers Party, which Bill asked for 6 months on this. It goes to all of this. Unless there's an actual plan in place, none of these little low IQ nonsense things that people want to hear are going to work. It's just another bait and switch to something else that keeps the power structure in place.
So, yeah, on that note, I'm actually glad you brought that up because I didn't even think about that this morning.
Oh, I'm still hearing this stuff. It reared its ugly head in social media again. And this is what communists do. This is a communist tactic to keep everybody busy. Let's keep getting signatures. Let's keep going back to referendums, which are also unconstitutional. We've got to go back to a fundamental structure change by removing and prosecuting these people for the T word, the big T, which is treason, and get rid of all of their mechanisms to keep them in power and repackage themselves.
So, yeah, on this show, we speak to the law and to the Constitution, right? Because bulwark to society. They are what guard our freedoms. And you brought up property taxes, for instance. And I have had some people, I've argued this point numerous times with people, but I've had some people to say, well, that's law because it's in our Constitution. And I'll agree with you that it's in the Constitution. However, not everything in our Constitution is lawful. People have to grasp that around their heads. If you're going to use that ideology, that stand on government, then you are agreeing that murdering the innocent is now lawful in Michigan because it's in our Constitution.
The 1963 Constitution was illegally installed. They did not have the ability to do it the way that they did it, and they did not have the votes of the citizenry to actually approve that Constitution. It's just like all of the proposals they put out. Those proposals have not passed in any way that's a lawful way because they just keep changing the rules. And by the time we get to where we are now, we don't even realize how many infractions of the law that were done in order to get us here today, in order to do whatever they want to do, including rewrite the law.
Yeah, and Thomas Jefferson, during the signing of during the signing of the Constitution, he said something profound that a lot of people just kind of skip over because it's just a statement that everybody can understand, but don't understand the implications of. So he said that one generation does not have the right to bind another generation, right? And that was referring to the Constitution at hand that they were trying to pass. Now, previous to that, we know that they had the Articles of Confederation, right? Every single colony who became a state signed on to the Articles of Confederation, right? There's plenty of discourse among them, yes, but everyone signed on to it. When they adopted the Constitution, how is the Constitution declared within itself to be ratified across all of the states? It's not by every state has to ratify it. It's ratified by a majority percentage of the states, right? That is not the original intent with the Articles of Confederation. So even the federal Constitution, when you look at it in its entirety, the federal Constitution is also installed unlawfully because every state had signed on to a confederation. And now, even though at the time, every state eventually have signed on to it, but at the time, we allowed for a ratification of less than all of the states. right? And that's no less than they do. I mean, the majority of everything that we do is majority vote. Why is that? If we hold to the law and the Constitution, it's either lawful or it's not lawful. So it should be 100% or none if the people, according to John Adams, were moral and religious enough to maintain their republic, to maintain their Constitution. That's the sole issue that we have. People do not understand where we came from. They don't understand the foundation on which this country was laid and founded upon. So anything goes in their mind, right? And that's why we have so much of this legislation that people call law, and it's not. It's pretended legislation. It holds no force of law, and it cannot violate the rights of men. You know, you mentioned Norton versus Shelby County. Another great one that I use frequently is Marbury versus Madison. Right? You cannot convert a right into a privilege. How simple is that thought? You know, it's profound coming from a court, but it's the simplest of thoughts regarding law, is that we established the law here. We established the government here, right? The law by the grace of God and the government by the will of men. So therefore, we are the masters of everything that we see going on. We cannot put the blame on anything but ourselves because we allow things to continue, right? In its practicality, the Declaration of Independence says very clearly that the people have the right to abolish or alter, in reverse order, please, to alter or abolish any government that violates these freedoms and violates our liberties, and to set up new guards to protect them, right? It's fundamental principles. But because we don't understand that as a whole in America, people call all these things laws. Look at the newest thing that Michigan just did with cage-free chicken eggs, right? Has anybody actually read through that and understood what's being said there?
Yes,
because it's not cage-free.
Absolutely nothing being said in this. It is the dumbest of all laws, pretended laws, that they could have written. Because basically, you know, they can now they've just added the fact that they can crack the eggs, put them in a bag, and sell them the same way from caged chickens, and throw in a whole bunch of additives. That's what they've done. They've removed the natural preservation method that God put in place, which is shelled eggs, and replaced it with, okay, well, we're just going to start processing eggs, and that makes it all okay. That's the part. And I've got a friend yesterday that sent me video of an area in West Olive where there's something going on there, because in a small farm there were state trucks that were there, and they with a dumpster, and they are killing turkeys, throwing them in the dumpster in the middle of the night. They're literally destroying our food supply. So I'm going to tell everybody, I've been working with Sean Starry, and we, besides Off the Grid with Karen and Ralph and Bill and Dr. David and such, to help people understand you're going to have to figure out how to grow your own food. The attack that the commies have always used on people was to destroy the farms, the farmers, and destroy the food. The Bolsheviks did it. They did it in the Western United States with the Native Americans out there to destroy the buffalo. This is the plan. History repeats, and we are on a smack course with that right now. Going back to the law and Marbury versus Madison, there's all sorts of them out there that we need to relearn this so that we can stand up to the lawful process, because none of it is being followed. I've got a guy I'm interviewing tonight at 9:00. His name is Doug Force, and he did a documentary on, and this is interesting because President Trump keeps talking about Canada being our 51st state. Well, turns out there's actually some really interesting history on this, going way back to the 1800s, where the British Crown really, really set this up to subvert the nation, not only Canada, but the United States. We're going to go through the documentary he did, as well as all the cases that he's laid out there tonight. And I'm going to play it tomorrow. I don't know if we're going to do it live tonight, or if I'm just going to play it tomorrow. I might just play it tomorrow on BNN. One way or the other, it'll be on tomorrow morning. But he did one on the United States too. And somebody in, I believe, the State Department, they started threatening him and telling him, go back to Canada or bad things are going to happen to you. He went back to Canada and started working on the Canadian side of this, but there's also a side of the United States, and he's got all the proof. He's got the cases, he's got the proof, he's got it all laid out on what they did to basically make sure that there is no legitimate government in place in Canada or in the United States.
Yeah, and that's a dangerous topic.
That is a dangerous topic.
I haven't dug too deep into it, but yeah, I'm not even going to go there because that's a whole nother long show we could do on that.
I think it's important. The General Assembly had gotten some of it right. However, what I know is that, like every single organization on the planet, it's all been infiltrated. All of these things have been infiltrated. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to just have to go back to the actual laws and help educate each other, realizing that there's a lot of infiltration out there. There's a ton of this, and go through and make it prove itself out on what happened, how they laid this out. Because if they have subverted our local elections, our local laws over the last few decades that we've been able to see, this is nothing new. They've been doing this since the beginning of our nation, and these people are well funded. There's a dual financial system going on, and most of us never see it. Some of us have gotten the privilege to peek into it a little bit, but it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking how much global influence is in the United States. And I'm going to tell you what, right now, there's some cases that I think are going to come to light fairly soon that are going to shock everyone to see exactly how these traders in the United States, a lot of them developers, they're traders, and how they've utilized foreign money to subvert the United States. And then, of course, they've got all the money, so they pay for the politicians to be put in place.
I would argue, too, that a lot of that has been going on not just since the formation of the United States in the United States, but before the formation of the United States in the United States. Because even you look at some of the founding fathers, and some of them were pretty questionable as far as their motives, and there was an awful lot of debate before stuff got framed and signed.
Well, and look at what they did. They used the people here that believed in wanting to build a great country. They used them to a certain degree in order to, sell the ideals. And I'm seeing the same thing happening in a lot of the grassroots groups. Not all of them, but most of them have been infiltrated. I
would say too that the founding fathers, thankfully, they were able to get past most of that infiltration and filter it out. And part of that you can see in some of the debates that they had at the time was ferreting out that infiltration and correcting it. And
Absolutely.
that's what needs to happen in any modern group, is to do that same process of filter everything.
Everyone needs to go through those background checks. It's just like the Constitution Party. There is a process that you have to go through to figure out who you're actually talking to. Because if you're talking to somebody who's a political operative that's been sent to disrupt, that's how they do it. They do it through infiltration, and they do it through disruption. That's exactly how it's been done.
It's so hard to do in a group of people who are too open-minded and lacking in discernment and critical thinking skills. That is something that, because we have removed the proper thought processes from the youth of our country, they've grown up now. They don't see. They are blinded. They have a veil over their eyes. They cannot see when someone is trying to do something which is not right. You get somebody with a little manipulation skills and a lot of the wrong intent, and they can individually, one man, take over an entire organization if they're good at it. And those who, because those few who start to see it will get shut down and shut out. I've seen it. I've seen it in the assembly. I'll say it out loud. And some of those people are still hanging around and still pushing their agenda. I don't know why. I don't know where it comes from. Some of them are not in a lawful assembly anymore, but they'll pretend that they are, just like we're a fake GOP situation.
Pretend
And so
patriot.
it continues to be manipulative. And so I can see exactly what you're talking about, the founders, but the founders fought over it. And I've been in a little bit of that fight. I know the value of some of the principles they put in the Constitution, and especially in the articles, which I don't like to call amendments. I like to call them articles because it was a separate document and it was there for a reason. It was meant to ensure that we had rights to protect us from the government. The Constitution's for the government. The articles are for the people. They're not amendments to the Constitution. They were there because people insisted that the Constitution recognize the rights of the people. If you don't do that, and you don't know and aren't willing to know how to fight for your rights, those few people who are manipulative are going to take advantage of you. And it's happened in every organization, because there's enough people out there who are looking for the wrong place. And based on the very little that I know, it's still happening. And of course it's still happening. You have to expect that. But if you don't set up any, like you did with the Taxpayers Party, if you set up nothing to protect yourself, they're going to keep coming. You have to have some people that are capable of seeing it. And without the experience, that can be tricky. I didn't have the experience. I'm a little more experienced now, but I'm still, it takes a village of people to see it and rent it out, dig it out like a cancer. Like little cancer cells here and there can turn into big tumors, and you got to get them out. But if you don't know your rights either, that is one way they will bypass the rights that are God-given, that are in those articles. If you don't know those and you aren't willing to stand up and say, hey, you're violating my due process right now, and all of you are allowing it to happen. Been there, done that. And that is why I'm so adamant about due process and free speech, because those two things are very vital to eliminating this threat to those quote unquote grassroots organizations that try to turn things around. Everybody's got that one way. This is the one way that we're going to try to fix and solve everything. I don't think there is necessarily one way. So find your role to play, but do it heartily and be careful.
Well, and going back to what you said too, is that I think that even one person that stands up and speaks out against something, all of a sudden they sort of get crowd stalked by the rest of them. Yes. And instead of listening to that person, because that person may be that one voice, the one voice in the wilderness there that's actually telling you what's wrong, because they are not jumping off the cliff like a lemming. They're questioning things. They're making them prove out. Trust is earned. It's not given. You don't give people respect or trust just because they're there, just because they show up. That's something that gets earned over time and through consistency, through a consistency of a character that is unwavering and that will not compromise to the evils of the world.
You're right. That's a huge problem, not only in organizations, but in government as well. Weeding out the people who are just there to cause division, especially, let alone destruction, right? But it doesn't take a whole lot of discernment as much as it just takes knowledge of how it's supposed to be proper. I've used this analogy a lot. It comes from my wife because she worked in a bank vault, right? She dealt with money all day. How do you find counterfeit bills? You don't study how many ways there is to make a counterfeit bill. You study the real ones. That way, when a counterfeit comes along, there's something wrong with it, right? The same thing goes with government and law. If you study how it's supposed to be, when something comes along, you'll know it's not quite right if there's a different motive behind it. Same thing goes in religion, right? If we actually study to show ourselves approved, as Timothy says, then we'll know when a counterfeit comes in. We'll see those people that crept in unawares, like John spoke about, right? It happened then. It happens now. Not only in the church, but in different organizations, especially conservative patriot organizations. You can find these people. They might have a lot of good ideas, but at the core, they are lawless in how they want to do it. Right. And I oppose that. And that's the reason why you first brought up Donna the Axe My Tax. That's the reason why I oppose that. When I was asked to sign it, I was like, I can't do it because there's lawlessness in the text that I had found. And I am all for the principle because property taxes are unlawful. They exist in all 50 states. The people keep paying them out of threat of losing their property. But property is one of the foremost principles of a republic, of the people's right to exist. They have a right to property, right? Otherwise, you just have a democracy where 51% can take your land away from you if they so please. That's not what we have. That's not what we ever have. But that's what we're turning into as the people allow it. All of these things we see, it will branch into the DNR here as we go. But all of these things we see, you talked about the food supply. We've seen short, call them famines, but they're really not yet. But we've seen short lack of food supplies. When you talk about the chickens and such, the same thing happens with dairy farmers. Dairy farmers not that long ago were ordered to dump millions of gallons of milk, right? Perfectly fine milk. I would have drank it. They weren't allowed to give it away or sell it. The apple farmers. I come from apple country, right? Up here in northern Kent County. This is apple country, right? Even our roads are named after other fruits, apples and peaches and all sorts. We have Apple Avenue for Pete's sake, right? But they were ordered to get rid of, I don't know how many tons of apples. Even ones that hit the ground, right? And I understand that principle. They don't want to sell things that rot on the ground. However, there's a lot that they pick up or that can be taken and eaten just perfectly fine, right? But they are not allowed. They have to destroy them according to the law that they submit themselves to, which is not in existence. So the Department of Agriculture is all over this. They are infringing and usurping authority that we, the people, have never delegated to them.
Well, look at the raw milk. I mean, we should be able to, you want to drink raw milk, you should be able to drink or eat anything you want. And for them to put any restrictions on it, who in the hell are these people? They don't have the right to tell Americans what to do or to even to regulate it. You want to drink raw milk? You should have the right to do that. You should have the right to try any medical procedure you want. This is your right. They don't have the right to manage us like a crop or a slave class.
Like the Irish during the Irish potato famine.
Yep.
Which was not a famine. That was, I just recently saw a meme on this and reminding people of this, and it's absolutely true. The Irish potato famine was not a famine that was naturally caused so much as it was because of England basically taking the food supply of Ireland.
There you go, the freaking Brits again.
Yeah. But Ireland was at the time looked at as being kind of like a backwards rural farmland that nobody really cared about, and so they were looked at as just slightly above a slave class. And so the Irish potato famine was basically where England was pretty much taking all of the food from Ireland. And then they had the potato blight that took out the potatoes, and that was like the only food that Ireland still was able to eat because of everything else being taken from them.
There you go, the global elite sitting right there on the crown. I think we got a big problem there. And when you hear what they've done to Canada, that all goes back to the crown and the British Accreditation Registry. There's a lot of misinformation of things out there, but it is a thing. And it's not just for the bar. It's actually a large organization that has the taken over the rights to basically give things, organizations and processes legitimacy. Shouldn't exist. What's that?
Licensure.
It's so that they allege. No such thing as a license to practice law. They lying to you.
Yep.
Well, and maybe this is maybe this is the moment where we again say, we're not against all of the British. We're against all of the corruption and the crime.
Yeah.
we love you, Brits. You know, we wave a little British flag for all the people who are trying to strive for their own sovereignty all over the world.
I'm part English, so I can go ahead and
yeah.
I'm a Western European mutt, so I'm just going to tell you right now, it's going back to the elites in every part of the world. We're not against the Chinese people. We're not against the Jewish people. We're not against the Palestinian people. We're against these people that are sitting in the seats, pulling the levers, the puppet masters that are grifting off of the people of the world.
And they're taking it, and those people are taking advantage of the people of their own countries.
Yep. It is the beast system that people submit to. And the only way to stop that is to give the people the knowledge of where they're at and the knowledge of what it's supposed to be and how in the world you get out of it, right? That's all we can do here is show them the way, and it's up to them whether or not you want to grasp it. You either leave the bondage that you submitted to, whether out of ignorance or willfully. We were all born in ignorance, right? We submitted to everything that our parents gave us when we were younger. I'm one of those vaccinated children, right? And I quit that as well. Donna, I'm a raw milk drinker, right? This is one of those things. It's we make our own butter and all sorts of cream things in our household. Thank God that he's given me a wife that is willing to do that, because my head can't wrap around how some of these things are done. But that's one of the things. If the government wants to regulate this kind of stuff, I just admitted to them. I hope they see it. I admitted to them. I'm one of those guys. I will do all this because I have the right to do it. If you want to regulate it, come to my door. If you want to try to take my milk from my children, you got a whole nother thing coming over milk, right? If you want to try to bring that farther and try to take my children for things that I won't do, that so-called our law, you got a whole nother world that you don't know what you're entering into. Because I'm not playing. When it comes to family, we cannot play, right? When it comes to my community, I'm not playing. This is real life. It's not a game. People like to reference, and I've done it too. People like to reference the government, these world leaders that are set up and tolerated within the halls of government, like they're playing a chessboard, and and chessboard's on the people's backs, right? And all it takes to end the game is to stand up. Well, it's not a game, first and foremost. It's real life. We need to adjust our mentality in that, because as long as we continue to think it's a game and playing by their rules to get things done, we're just playing as pawns in their little chess game, right? We're entertained by the circus while trying to stop the circus. It doesn't work. And all of these things we see, we talked about the famine and a lot of the destruction and the food supply and such. All these things you can read about. You go back to the scriptures in Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28. You can read about all those things, right? The nations that the Lord brings in to start the destruction of them. You can read about what things happen. When we talk about famine, the reason why I said that's not really a famine is because the famine that are described that come from the Lord for the ignorance and the disobedience of his people, his called out people in the nations of the world, right? You read about in Psalms 2. You'll find out that famines will go as far as you don't have enough food, they end up eating their own children, right? That's a famine. And that has happened numerous times throughout history. Don't negate that. It didn't just happen once, but it happens numerous times throughout history if the people allow it to get to that point. Regarding
people are capable of all sorts of things that they wouldn't think that they are when push comes to shove. It's really only a very, very strong, determined person that will not fall prey to this sort of thing. And you better have your mind set right now, because I think we're going to come into a situation that's a total collapse at some point in time, because I would be prepared for it.
Total collapse with people who have been indoctrinated into manufactured helplessness.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't be caught away by the delusion that's going to be right in front of everybody. They're always going to put up a head. They're always going to put up a hero. and they're always going to put up some big event that is going to catch everybody's attention, all the while they're doing other stuff that's unlawful behind the scenes, right? Don't get caught up with the nice shiny distractions, because that's all they are. They're distractions.
I got to bring something up real quick while you say this, because there was a notice that was put out on that we caught, and it's kind of an obscure reference, but apparently they've caught called for extra medical personnel to be in DC during the inauguration week. Why would they have done that? And it was obscure, unless they know that there's going to be some problems. And I'm going to say it right now. I really think President Trump should just go into an office somewhere, be inaugurated, and get to work and stop all of this pomp and circumstances around the inauguration. We need to stop this. This is like a coronation of a king. And I like President Trump. I supported President Trump. I think he was deprived his office unlawfully by a rigged election system, and I'm going to stand on that. However, it's time to make some changes and say, you know what, everybody go home. And go home. We're going to do a private inauguration. We will televise it if you want to watch it, but today's going to be a different day, and we're going to go back to work restoring the United States of America under what was the intention of the way it should be.
Well, and I brought this up before, but I think it's something important to keep in mind, is that back in, I think it was around, it was sometime in the 1800s, there was a Japanese ambassador. I think he was an ambassador, some kind of a diplomat, that came to the United States and went on a tour. And he wrote about the fact that he was amazed that he could just go into the White House and talk to the president, and they didn't have all kinds of security and all that kind of stuff. And he was amazed by this, but the regular Americans that he talked to around DC were like, yeah, this is the way it should be, because the president doesn't hold a whole bunch of power. We don't want a king. And we specifically set this up to get away from the problems that we had with all of the monarchies back in Europe. And this is how it should be. And he thought that was really remarkable. And this was the general opinion that he got from just regular Americans.
Well, and to go further with that, in order for us to have a constitutional republic and have this thing go back to the way it's supposed to be, we're going to have to stop clamoring for fake news to tell us what's going on and letting them control the narrative. There's got to be a better way to do this, because if we want to have Jerry Springer politics, which is presented to us on every minute of our day, a lot of that started with CNN. When CNN came out and we started having cable news network instead of the local news, which I remember mom and dad putting the local news on and seeing what's going in the area, but it was never this constant feed of distraction, of getting everybody upset, of knowing what's going on. It wasn't this top down thing that we have. It was more local and that sort of thing, but we're being fed a narrative from the news. And I'm not just talking fake news. I'm talking all of it every day, but there's not any education going on.
Well, you bring up CNN too, and I don't think people realize how pivotal that was in a change in journalism.
It was.
Because previous to that, the journalism departments of a lot of the major networks were considered to be not a profit center, but a cost center. They were mandated as part of their license to be able to stay on the air, that they covered news, but they weren't expected to make money. They were expected to be an expense for the networks. And when that was the case, they weren't out there trying to basically manufacture news. They were out there investigating stuff, and they were investigating stuff that was unpleasant because they knew they didn't have a profit motive. And when they moved to when CNN was one of the early pioneers of that, where they realized, all of the networks realized that, they're making money off of covering the news. We should be able to make money off of it. And it really changed a lot of the mindset in journalism, if you look at some of the interviews with the people that were in journalism at the time.
And it made people dependent on what they're telling them to make them feel that they actually had some control, because they know what's going on. No, you don't, because they're manufacturing the narrative and they're lying full time. But anyhow, back to what you were going to say, Bill. Sorry for derailing that.
No, that's good. That's good. Because you can go back to the early 1900s and find out that the local bankers all gathered together behind closed doors and talked about what it would take to control the media, right? Because they wanted to push specific narratives. And that's exactly what they did. They found out that if you buy up these specific amount of newspapers in these specific areas, it matters not what the rest of them say, because it will reach so many eyes that the people will start to believe the narrative set forth. One quote I like to use from Hitler, right? He said, if you tell a lie long enough, loud enough, and often enough, the people will believe it. And he's absolutely right. People without discernment, if you put this in their face over and over and over, the people start believing what is true. That's the reason why I call Fox News conservative crack, right? It's owned by the same talking heads that CNN and ABC and all of the others are owned by. They promote the same thing, just the other side of it, right? There is no actual journalism, and even the journalists will tell you that. They're on record numerous ones of them are on record stating that we do not give the news, but rather what they're told to say, right? A lot of the media will admit that they have what they call a leftist angle to their news. Right? It's promoting one or the other, keeping the division again, right? House divided against itself cannot stand. Nation divided against itself won't stand either. That's the whole premise. And as long as the people keep putting that in front of their eyes, they're going to buy into it, right? That's the reason why King David said in the Psalms, I will put no wicked thing before mine eyes, which means if there's something not lawful about this, I'm done with it. I'm not going to pay attention to it anymore. I'll call it out for what it is. I'll lay it on the table, and that's it. I'm not going to sit there and think about it and meditate over it, because eventually it will creep in. And that's why it's so important to pay attention to what we're viewing, what we're listening to, who we're listening to, especially. All of those things. It all goes back to the very foundations I talk about all the time, right? We have to understand what the law is in this country, because the moment they violate it, the people should be on them to say, nope, no more of that, right? You have crossed the line, and we're not going to tolerate it.
Can
Either
I
turn from it and fix it, or we're going to remove you and prosecute you, to put the fear into the next man that thou shalt not violate these things, right?
I want to bring up the something on the fake news that it's not just fake news there. It's fake news that's trickling down, because of course they left the fake news when we got burned by it or sick of it. And now they're in a lot of the content creators. And I got to tell you, I've been watching, the rise of Sean Ryan coming up really quickly. And he had this gal named Sarah Adams on. And while I was watching, I watched a little bit of it, and I looked at the way that it was being presented, and I'm like, they're lying. And there's something wrong with this. She's CIA and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, who's telling her what to say? Just because she said, I'm a CIA whistleblower who works for the CIA, right? And then you look at who he's had on there, like Eric Prince, the brother of Betsy DeVos, who paid Pence as well as some other people into the millions and millions of dollars. And I've got one video from a friend of mine who does investigative journalism on the ground, and it is damning. It is a damning piece of video on Betsy DeVos. Well, her brother is Eric Prince, and all Eric Prince is on there, and everybody wants to hear what he says because they tell you what you want to hear. Eric Prince sold Blackwater to Apollo Global and some of the other connections there, which tell me why all of a sudden these superstars popping up out of nowhere. And they're bringing in people that are telling people what they want to hear.
So you mentioned Blackwater. I saw a thing the other day. I've not been a fan of the DNA tests because it centralizes too much data. And it looks like Blackwater just bought, I think it was Ancestry.com.
Course, because they're all tied into the globalists. You want to see the person who does the best job I have ever seen, hands down, in going through all the assassination organizations, like the ones that were in fact in charge of the security for January 6th. This is an assassination organization. I'm going to tell you that right now. And bringing the proof forward is Jonathan Cagle, and laying out all of these organizations that are corporations that trade back and forth and on, and who's in charge and who's pulling the strings and such. They're all connected. And then they're connected to the politicians. When you see the economic structure, this dual structure that's out there, you will see that in fact Apollo Global is connected to all of these other ones. And who did Eric Prince was he connected to? Apollo Global. Are you kidding me? And now he's on Sean Ryan, and now we've got the CIA operative that's on there. That's supposedly a whistleblower from within the organization of CIA, which is employed by the CIA and blah blah. Who? No, and absolutely no. Now that makes you have to question every single other person that's on that alleged podcast, and watch how they do. He sits way back, looking real cool in his chair, trying to, be all kinds of casual. Watch their body language, and see. And I mean, question it. Question the people that look like body doubles, because it ain't them. I'm going to tell you, there's so much CGI going on and body doubles and such, and they're so good at it. Just watch Masters of Disguise, the gal who was involved in it, talking about how they did that or how they do that. She's literally telling you how they're doing it now. And yep. It's going on. Sorry, I digress, but guys, question everything.
Yeah, question and judge it righteously. Look at what it is and compare it with the standard that we have. Not the standard we want, the standard we have.
Nobody gets a pass, not even us. It's like, question us. If we fall down, if we do something wrong, you have to question us. But I can tell you right now, nobody can fake this kind of absolute randomness that goes on in this show. We don't even know what we're going to talk about before the camera snapped on, except, hey, how you doing? DNR? Yeah, let's go there. That's about it.
Yeah, we knew we were going to talk about the DNR, and it's been about 50 minutes, and we still haven't even touched the DNR.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
Let's jump into that. Let's bring this back to a little more local level, because that's where I flourish, right? You've heard me say, I don't care what happens at the federal level. So this was just sent out by the Michigan legislature, namely the majority of Republicans, signed by 53 of our legislatures here in Michigan, right? Not a majority, but pretty dumb close. And I got to bring this up on my page because I can't see yours.
And you know what? You have to start out before we do a commercial for this. I'm glad they went in the right direction and did something. But at this point in time, having existed in corporate America, this looks a little bit like a CYA measure. And so we're going to have, because everybody that has done crimes is trying to cover their behinds right now. So let's see if they're stepping forward to do something, or if it's just another smoke and mirrors.
And that's the question I have with it, because we see them all the time bring in and start up these little committees to investigate things or investigate people, right? Appointed people of bureaucracies. And that's all it is. They go in there and they drill them. The people get all excited. Yeah, the truth is brought out. And then next thing you know, it's gone, done away with, and nothing ever happened, right? Except now the people are a little more knowledgeable, but they didn't do anything about it. So yeah, I'm excited. I want to see them actually do something about it. And we're going to get into that, what they can actually do.
And should.
But yeah, and should, right? It's their duty as people's representatives. So we have this issue with the DNR in Michigan, just clear-cutting land, right, with the appearance of setting up potential green energy, namely solar farms, whatever else they're going to do. I don't know. They're going to do what they're going to do and what the people let them get away with.
Yeah, hold on. One stop. You got to go back to the fact that the solar farms, yes, the second darkest state in the nation is Michigan. It's stupid. It's totally stupid. Okay. But more than that, What are they doing with the mineral rights that they have actually claimed? As they're claiming our taxes go up, nothing's happening until there's an election cycle, and then all of a sudden Whitmer gets off her behind, and you got more construction equipment than you could possibly imagine. We didn't see anything for 4 years. But the point being is that what are they doing with the trees they're cutting that they have clear cutted? And I'm an eyewitness to this, and what the destruction they left, right? What are they doing with the minerals, the mineral rights, as well as the trees? And so it's not just the solar farms. It goes further than that. And we can't leave those facts behind and get distracted by shiny things out there.
Well, I
You're
think for
jumping
the
ahead of me.
minerals
Right.
too, a lot of people think of mineral rights as being, oil and gas and that sort of thing, but we have incredible amounts of minerals in Michigan specifically, which are not even petroleum based. We've got copper deposits, we've got salt deposits, we've got deposits of all. Yeah, we've got all kinds of different materials that are underground here. So the mineral rights thing is huge.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. So I jumped ahead of you, Bill. That's of course
Yeah,
you did, because we all think alike.
We'd get to that eventually, but nonetheless, it was good to bring it up. So you have the legislature right now calling for answers, right? The first paragraph, they say, we demand answers as to where flattening over 400 acres of forest to clear the way for foreign built, mind you, solar panels fit within your department's mission. Absolutely. If they're going to do something, they have to prove where they got the authority from, right? They're demanding a full report on all their involvement with the effort to replace valuable natural resources with unproven green energy technologies. Right? We've seen this being fought for decades, this whole Green Deal. It's absolute garbage. There's very, very little truth in it, but it's all promoted to push the narrative that the people are destroying the planet, and the less of you there are, the better off we'll be, right? That's the bare bones of it. And I say lead by example. Go ahead, be the first to remove yourself from the planet. You're going to help everybody else out according to your own words, not mine. So
Bravo.
in paragraph 2, and you pointed this out to me, Donna, because I missed it. But in paragraph 2, they're not only are they demanding these answers in a report filing, however, they're calling for the stoppage of all solar projects on public land until there can be a complete review of the actions. Absolutely. If there's a question to what the DNR is doing, the legislature should stand up and say, nope, cease and desist. Whoa, man, I just bumped my camera. Cease and desist. You're going to give answers for this before you take one more step.
Yep, you're done. They say they demand a stoppage of all solar projects. They should demand a stoppage of all their activities, period. Because when somebody breaks one law, you have when an organization breaks one law like that, they're likely to be breaking other ones. So it needs to be a complete stop, desist. You're done. We're your bosses. You may not do anything until we get a handle on this.
Well, and that's the thing you have with unconstitutional agencies. The only thing you can expect from them is to make unconstitutional actions, right? There's your foundation. Now, the DNR has a right to exist in certain forms. What we see the DNR as today is not the proper existence of what it should be, and we'll go there. But and I love their verbiage here where they say in paragraph 3 that you're completely willing to jump into bed with the solar industry and foreign powers. Yeah, great. That's proper wordage for that. They're just willing to go in and commit adultery against the people, right? And usurp authority and then grant all of this extra funding to foreign entities, right? Providing for the enemies of the state, we'll say. I think there's a definition for that. It starts with a T and ends with reason.
The big T.
So yeah, I'm glad they're doing this. They're admitting in paragraph 4 that it's unacceptable, and it's a clear example that the DNR has forgotten its responsibility to work hand in hand with local governments. Okay, I'm all for it. And then they go into that the voters. What does it say? Oh, voters across our country embrace a return to common sense. Some of us haven't lost it, but it would be nice if everybody else would get back to it.
How about
Fiscally
law? We return to
responsible
the law.
government, right? The days of uncontrolled spending and the complete embrace of partisan initiatives are over. I hope so. That means that as of, I don't even remember the date. This was written January 6th. It's the 8th. So as of today, we are completely free of any type of uncontrolled spending and deficit, right? No, we're not. But it was a cool phrase anyway. The people gave us a mandate to ensure they receive the highest possible return on investment for their tax dollars. This is a horrible statement by the legislature because we did not mandate, we demanded. Without us, they don't exist. So it's not a mandate, it is law to them. You do or else, right? And it's not that we demand an investment on our tax returns, or that we demand a return on our tax dollar investment, but rather, why are you taking our tax dollars for these purposes? Okay, because the legislature controls this. Understand that. We'll go there. But we are certain that the DNR subverting local governments to trade our natural resources for a quick buck from China does not pass that test. Absolutely, it does not. So they have the responsibility in the last paragraph to protect and manage our natural resources and not get into business with unknown companies and foreign technologies. They're glad that the project has finally reached the public eye, right? Well, people need to start paying attention to these things. I'll admit, I missed it until somebody mentioned it, I don't know, probably last week or so when we first started talking about it. But now it's time, they said, to shed some light on plans throughout the state. Okay, cool. They look forward to a response from the DNR with the answers they seek to ensure the DNR is not so far off course that it has forgotten its mission entirely. Absolutely. I've been looking for those answers from the legislature for some time as well. Right. And you can view that. It's public record signed by 53 of the people. So let's go in and talk about the DNR a minute. And Donna, you can pull this up if you want. I don't know if you have a copy of the Constitution readily available on hand. Everybody should be like number 1 or 2 tab on your browser at all times, right? Because that's our standard that we have to go to when we're looking at this kind of stuff.
I actually pulled this up earlier because I actually had this up and running. Ta-da.
Okay. So we're going to start out.
Do you want to start there, or do you want to start?
Nope. We're going to back up a little bit. If you can go to Article 9, Section 52.
Hang on.
Before we get to that, we're going to talk about it. We don't have to look about it because I think everybody knows an article in the executive branch of the Michigan state government, they have a right to have up to 20 principal departments, right? Departments, not lawmakers, but rather departments, kind of an overseer reporting agency to kind of inform the governor of what things are happening, how things are going on, so that the governor can make proper determinations and provide for changes in law for how they see fit to the legislature to either be adopted or rejected, right? There's your definition of what the departments do. They have no control over the people. They are merely an opinion agency given to the governor to help the governor do his job, right? So in Article 9, Section 52, this is where we start. This is the natural resources section, right? It says the Conservation and Department of Natural Resources of the state are hereby declared to be the paramount public concern in the interest of health, safety, general welfare of the people. The legislature shall provide for the protection of the air, water, and other natural resources of the state from pollution, impairment, and destruction.
And they have destroyed them.
The DNR is not mentioned here because they don't have the authority to make those rules or regulations or laws, right? The legislature is solely in charge of this. All right, we'll move on from that. We're going to drop down to Article 9, Section 35. Subsection 6. I got to scroll way down here a minute because I was not ready for that. Just give me a minute. This is the problem of doing things live. Is that?
No, it's great.
I only have so many things.
Oh, let's see. 935 or 36? You said 35.
35. Whoop. It's where you were originally.
Here we go.
Come on now. There we go. Now my mouse is working. Okay. So, laying a foundation, the governor can set up a Department of Natural Resources, right, to basically oversee, kind of give the opinions of what's going on, what shouldn't happen, so they can make adjustments in the law, so the legislature can make adjustments in the law. My bad. I apologize for that. So, Article 35 of Section 9 goes in to describe what they call the Natural Resources Trust Fund, because for them to do things requires money, right? It requires stealing from the people so that they can do their whatever they're going to do, right? Because all taxation is theft one way or another. However, I'm not going to protest all taxes, because for government to exist and secure our liberties, the people have to put up some sort of funding in one way or another to make those things happen. Okay. If we want guards for our liberties, we have to sacrifice and pay for it. Okay. So you have a couple of different funds that are mentioned here, right? And one of them is the State Parks Endowment Fund, which strangely isn't mentioned until the next section, or it's not described till the next section, but here it is showing up in subsection 1, where they talk about the State Parks Endowment Fund has to have $800 million, right? That's the principal amount. All funds, and that is long since over, right? That trust fund has had that much money. So we're beyond that point. And then the trust fund for these natural resources in subsection 2, you'll find out when the State Parks Endowment Fund has reached $800 million, the next trust fund for natural resources shall not exceed $500 million. Okay. And it goes in to describe what funds go in or out of there. Right. And then the next few sections describe some of the things that the fund is supposed to be used for. The acquisition of land or rights inland for recreational purposes, or protection of the land because of its environmental importance or scenic beauty, right? The development, renovation, and redevelopment of public recreation.
I don't know about you, but I would say a field full of clear-cut stumps is definitely scenic.
Well, so is a bunch of black panels set up at angles across hundreds of acres, right? I mean, that is always something I want to wake up to and see out of my kitchen window in the morning.
Same thing with the windmills. The windmills, as well as the solar farms, are destroying the environment. They are so destructive. If you haven't really looked into them and how much basically strip mining they have to do for all of these elements, and even I actually know quite a bit about this. The coolant in the nose cone of these windmills is so much worse than what Freon ever was, and they got rid of that. They can't seal the nose cones up. That's just one example of this. The entire thing is a disaster, and it's about a land grab. There's the end of the story. I'm going to take you to the end of the story right there. It's a land grab.
Well, so you'll notice nowhere in this section, right, that funds the entire DNR does it talk about energy in any way.
Correct.
Right? That is where I stand against the legislature when they want an account for how they're doing this, right? They don't have the authority to do it. So that should just end right there. I don't need a report. I don't need an account of why they're trying to clear cut for solar panels, if that's in fact what they're doing, because they can't do it. Those funds cannot be used for those purposes. All right.
But Bill, they're just in the government. They can do anything. And if they can't do it, they'll talk to another unconstitutional agency and they'll do it. And they'll do like a partnership. And then they'll just write up a contract. And what's the law? Here's our paper.
Yep. It's all about the foundation. All right. So you'll see in subsection 6 there that the legislature shall provide by law for the establishment of the trust fund board within the Department of Natural Resources. That's the only time the Department of Natural Resources is mentioned in our Constitution. All right. By name, that is it. And the trust fund is what funds it. So the trust fund board shall recommend projects to be funded. The board shall submit its recommendations to who? The governor, because it's an executive department. The governor, who shall submit the board's recommendations, I can't emphasize that enough, to the legislature in an appropriations bill. Okay? That doesn't mean that it becomes law. It doesn't mean they can do it right away. It has to go through the legislature. Therefore, if they're doing something, the legislature is solely responsible for putting a stop to it or funding it, one or the other. Right?
Well, Curtis just got ahead of me here on a question because he said, who is on the trust fund board? Because that was going to be my next question, is like, who is on this board? I think we should look it up. I'm going to do that right now. That's yeah, we're doing that.
Surprise, surprise. So, yeah, you have all of this going on. And let me tell you, if they don't have the authority to do it, the first thing should be, come in here, give us an account. I'm talking about the legislature. They should call this Director Bowers or Bowen. I forget his name now. I think it was
Scott.
Bowers. Scott Bowen.
Scott Bowen.
They should call him in and say, hey, you are under subpoena to the legislature. Give an account for what you're doing, right? That your words can be recorded here. If it is unlawful what they're doing, or that they weren't granted the authority to do it, what is the next step? The legislature immediately should have articles of impeachment set up, because he is an appointed official, right? Let alone the governor could actually just remove him. But we know that's not going to happen, because it just doesn't. They're hand in glove here. But the legislature should immediately have the articles of impeachment against this man and everybody involved, and should immediately open it up to the court session of the Senate, and should have him removed and prosecuted, and give an account for every dollar that was spent for those purposes. Okay. That is what has to happen. And let me tell you what's not going to happen, right? Because we don't have the people in there that understand what they swore an oath to enough to get it to that point. All right. Like we started, I'm glad they've said certain things. I'm glad they're wanting an account, and I'm glad they're calling for the stoppage of it, but it takes much more than that to actually fix the problem.
Look at all of this. This is not just a board. Look at all these sub boards and councils and crap.
Wolf Management Advisory Council.
What's that?
Wolf Management Advisory Council.
Yeah, that's when they dropped the wolves on the moose problem we had. Now we got a wolf problem, so we need to hire more people. These people are idiots. Total and complete and utter failures and idiots. Nobody, you know what? We could not in any way, shape, or form conduct business the way that these morons do.
I don't know. It seems perfectly recreational to me to take things that absorb sunlight and grow for free, cut them down to put things that absorb sunlight up that we have to buy from a foreign country, and then sell the energy to the privately run energy grid for a profit that goes somewhere mysterious we don't know.
Okay,
that sounds recreational to me.
This took me a little while to get here because our state site sucks. But anyhow, board member names, and if you want to see something poorly designed, go to anything that the state of Michigan puts out, because they put out information in order to hide it. You got to have almost a freaking college degree in how to navigate this crap. So we've got Dr. Brandy Brown, chair. You know what? We need to look into every single one of these people. We've got Stephen Ham, Scott Bowen, Christina McAnees. Who are these people? How in the world and did they get involved in this? William Rustum, staff.
I am amazed they actually put up their addresses.
Wow,
that seems really strange to me. Must have been an oversight.
Well, we got it now, don't we? I say I just go ahead and screenshot this. This is gonna be great.
Yeah.
I do this
Brandy Brown.
What's
She's
that?
She's right in Comstock. How about that?
Comstock.
The chair of the committee sits right here in my little county.
Well, yeah, and mine too.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. There we go. We've got all of their addresses and phone numbers. I think this would merit a call. Maybe we should do this live on camera. That would be a riot.
Looks like William Rustum is out of there now.
Mason expires 10/1/24, 10/1/26. Oh, some of these are current, some of them are not. Hey, we should call Brandy, business extension. Find out what's going on here with us. Can we do that? I say yes. Let's do this. This is how random we are on here, guys. You don't like it, go listen to CNN. This is it's just the way we do it. She's in Comstock, but she's got a 313 prefix on it, which is from the other side of the state. How'd she get a 313?
That's Detroit, right?
She's from Detroit. She's got a Comstock address. However, this could be great. Okay. Let's see what we have. Walker Miller Energy Services.
Oh, of course.
Hang on, let me recall that again, because I'm
Who's
going to
making money on this one, I wonder.
Yeah, Walker Miller Energy Services. This is something that we need to look into, boys and girls. This is going to be great. Let's see if I can listen.
Thank you for calling Walker Miller Energy Services. If you know the 3-digit extension of the team member you are trying to reach, please dial it now.
Yes, I do. 131.
Team member.
Clean energy experts.
Yeah, go
Check
ahead.
out
And
their
ask the
partners
first
and
question.
collaborators.
131 is unavailable. To dial another extension, press 1. To
Okay,
leave a voicemail, press
let's try 0.
Oh, you beat me to it, Ralph. I just put that in the chat too.
0 is unavailable.
Yeah, check out their partners and collaborators section on their site.
Hang on, see if we can text somebody.
Welcome to the company directory. Please dial the first 3 digits of the last name of the person you wish to reach.
Tesla?
United Way, BP.
Okay,
Sunoco.
I'm giving up on this. They're not making it easy to contact them. So this is behind a veil of some sort. So where are you looking, Ralph?
The Walker Miller Energy Services website.
Where did you find this
In the
on? Did you
chat.
find it on the state site?
No, I did a search for it. Check the chat.
Okay, hang on.
WMEnergy.com.
And where did you find WMEnergy.com?
Search for Walker Miller Energy Services,
Where did you find them that they're connected to this?
because that was the company that answered the phone when you called there.
Perfect. I'm just letting people know we are documenting this so that they can say, oh, wow, they actually did look this stuff up. Okay, here we go. Carla Walker, co-founder, energizing our industries. We are your clean energy experts.
Yeah, so scroll down a little bit, and below the our values, where they've got embrace equity and all of that stuff. Check out the partners and collaborators section.
Yep, I'm right there. Look at
yeah.
that. And
It goes way beyond this. This is one of the special groups. They had their own report. I'll read this to you a minute. In their media, this Black woman-owned company in Detroit is thriving thanks in part to strong climate policy.
Oh man.
yeah, I'm kind of done with this whole protected class of people nonsense going on. I'm sorry. We're done with it. So let's look at DTE. So there's some connections between the signature gatherers that were paid by Dana Nessel and her wife through a 501c3, and somehow DTE is what weaved into this too. We're figuring this out, but all of these corporations are being supported by your tax dollars by traitors to our Constitution and our nation. Yeah, I'm not okay with this. So yeah, let's just see how this. So she is literally the person in charge of this country, or in charge of the trust fund. There you go. I'm sick of this. This is so bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, you wonder how they get away with things. I mean, you look at the very fine local levels. Everybody knows there's corruption at the federal level, right? Everybody knows there's corruption federally. Most people understand there's corruption at the state level. A lot of people understand the county level. But when you get down to the nitty-gritty and start looking at all the fine little things that are happening in your local areas and who is actually in charge of all these little committees that give their opinions and drive the narrative, there you're going to find your players. The players don't actually exist at the higher levels. They're puppets. The players exist at the very base level.
Okay, so this guy, I get up every day knowing I'm going to change somebody's life. The question is, for the better or for the worse?
Get up every day.
I'm going to change somebody's life. I'm going to change my life. It's about me. This is where we play the
You can trust me.
Yeah, this is where we play the Toby Keith song. Growing a diverse workforce for our clean energy economy. Oh my goodness, Carla, you are just an inspiration to the rest of us.
Because we couldn't do it without other races, other than the minority of the white population in the state of Michigan.
Wait a
State-based
minute.
home energy efficiency contracting training grants. Now, I'm kind of done with all of this racial nonsense. It's just it's something that they're using to take us hostage. And I don't care. I could really debate this, because I'm going to tell you what. I have my youngest daughter is Black Indian, and I mean, she's dark, she's South Indian, and she's from India. And what's really interesting is when they try to go after a white woman, and they don't know that she actually has a Black or a dark Indian child, and watch what they do. Watch them run the media. There was a point in time where I was fighting an issue, probably, I'm going to say 20 some years ago. And the news media wanted to interview me. And I'm like, great. So I didn't even think about it. I walked outside with my daughter on my hip, because she was little at the time, for the interview. It wasn't, I didn't, I wasn't even thinking that, didn't plan it. It just was, it was. And I get out there and they look at me, white mom with a Black child. What the hell do we do now? Because they were going to try to hang this on, oh, look, a white woman from the burbs is fighting developers take over of the land, which was what it was. Had nothing to do with a racial thing whatsoever. It was, they were manipulating it, and they were using the manipulation of, oh no, the people complaining are from this area and there's not an ethnic diversity here or whatever. And here I walk out with my daughter on my hip. You should have seen the horror on their faces. And I handed them their behinds in an epic way, and basically told them, see, this is why you guys are so worthless, because you're not out here doing actual journalism. You're just pushing a narrative. And I'm like, you're young enough and dumb enough to listen to what they're telling you to do in order to push the advantage into the developer's hands. I could care less what color anybody is. I could care less what their culture is. I really don't care. It's like, if you're a person, I'm going to like you for what you are. I don't need everything to be the same. But to just target a group of people, no matter what it is, I don't care what it is patently wrong, and it's manipulation of people's emotions or feelings by creating a victim mindset. I think Rick Grinnell said something that was one of the greatest statements in one of the log cabin meetings that I went to. He's like, look, guys, we're done with being a subgroup of people. This is a group of people that get together that are gays, that are gay and lesbian. Okay. And he said, we're not a victim. He said, in fact, I'm kind of feeling sorry for the straight white guys right now, because of the fact that in, they're at a disadvantage to a certain degree. He said, but stop the victim mindset with us. He said, we're not victims. And it was a really great statement to make. And I would like to have everybody say that. I mean, I love some of the people that have, and I'm not going to say the name because I'll get called out for it, but Derek, that's running for governor in New York City. He's got an organization, and he shoved it right in their face. He is an African-American Black guy, whatever you want to call it. He does not care, and he thinks it's stupid. And he just mocks them for trying to break out the Black population as a victim. He said, this is nonsense. And just puts it out there. He actually gets censored, because he will use all the words that I won't use, because they'll turn it against me. We're not allowed to say those words, but everybody else is. And it's really a shame, because it's just another way to divide people. And I got to say, I really, I love people for people, not for what their labels are. The labels are terrible.
So there was a post I shared just the other day about LGBTQ people buying guns and learning how to use them. The reasoning was they're afraid of their rights being removed, their reproductive rights being removed, and so on. But I had mixed feelings about it, and I posted about it because they said, look, these people may be afraid of things that they don't need to fear, but because I don't think people are after them. Like you just said, you're not a victim if nobody's really after you. But also the idea that they're starting to recognize the value of rights and protecting them and the role that firearms can play in being able to protect your rights. I was like, you know what? This may be a good thing for that group of people because they're starting to wake up. And maybe they're looking at it from the wrong perspective, in a sense. I'm not offending anybody for that reason, but sometimes you come at it from a different direction, but if you come to the same conclusion of everyone else, hey, welcome to the club. We're all drawing the same conclusion. There's a reason that the second article is an important one. It's not an amendment. It's an article that protects our rights. And I just found that to be a really interesting concept, that they're really pushing this idea, but it's based on fear. And again, as we've always said, you shouldn't be afraid of something. You should just have an awareness and a willingness to do what is right.
Yeah.
And
open
a
that
true
door.
constitutionalist will honestly defend the rights, whether they agree with people or not. They will defend their rights.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. God put us here to make choices, and we're going to make some. People are going to make choices that we don't agree with. I don't know if you can get two people in the room that are going to agree with you. Bill and I disagree on several things. We're aligned on a lot of things, but I still like Bill and I like talking with him. And just because we disagree on several points doesn't mean that you just completely distance yourself from everybody. That's part of being an adult and part of life, is talking to people that you disagree with and defend their right to have a voice and say what they need to say and do what they feel they need to do. And honestly, God's going to sort this out. He's going to be the one sorting this out at the end of time. We're supposed to be doing what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be hold a moral and ethical line. And I get it. Where there are jobs that come along with it, and being a Christian who believes in salvation by Jesus Christ, which I do, that is my choice. That is definitely my choice. And everybody else, I would hope that they make good choices in their life. But if they make bad choices, no matter what it is, they're going to have to deal with the consequences of their own choices and not blame everybody else for having a momentary stupid or a lifelong pursuit of stupid. There's consequences to what we do. And natural law, God laid it out. Natural law, absolutely, there's consequences for what we do.
Yeah, and I've got to do it because that door was open. That whole issue, Donna, you know where I stand on that. I hold to the law. I hold to the scriptures. Those type of people are reprobate, right? I will have nothing to do with it except to point out where they're at. And Karen, you both just mentioned a lot of things that I can stem back into the 80s and point out in the congressional record where those things were actually brought up by the LGBTQ community at the time, right? Called the gay revolutionaries. That's what they called themselves. You look up Michael Swift. He gave a report, and I can read it. I got it up here on my computer. There are words that YouTube will in fact ban, but they're spoken and recorded right in the congressional record.
Let me ask you this though: are these people actually who they say they are, or is it just like the J6ers and all the other organizations? Are they the ones that have taken over a subgroup that they have infiltrated into to, in fact, put a mask on and pretend that they are what they're not? Are these all of these organizations? It's just like the environmental organizations, Acorn, all the rest of them. Do I believe these are true environmentalists? Not on your life. They are militant. The ones that are pushing this stuff probably paid provocateurs. They're probably part of federal operative. They're probably part of the FBI, CIA. They are agents of disinformation, and they are agents of division and causing chaos. I don't believe for 1 minute that what's happening with Israel or Palestine necessarily is a bottom up destruction and death machine. I think this is a top down. They place people to further their death agenda. And I had a person that was Palestinian ask me that. They said, "What side of the issue are you on?" I said, I'm not there. I can't talk intelligently about it because I don't know. But what I can tell you is that I am absolutely anti-establishment of anything that has set itself against people and kills people. Because if we do the right thing, we can talk our way out of this. We can do a little diplomacy and hopefully be able to sit at the table as a one American family that's very flawed, very, very flawed. There's not one of us that gets everything right. We were born into this. We were born into being flawed. We're born into being into sin. It's the way it is. Nobody's got this all right. Every single one of us has got a problem. But that doesn't mean that you just go in and eviscerate entire populations of people. You go in and you look at and say, who's really behind this? I don't believe the Palestinians are behind it or the Jews are behind it. I believe it's a global crime syndicate that's got their agents in it. And the same thing goes with LGBTQ. That's a real easy group of people to pick on and get the rest of the population to jump on against everybody when they may not know people within that group. They may not have any experience with them. And so the political operatives come in and take everybody hostage instead of saying, okay, what about the drug culture? The same thing. Almost all of our drugs has truly have been put into this nation by our own government. Our own government is trafficking drugs, weapons, and people, human beings. And and we're not even getting to the bottom of what's actually going on down here, because we're staying up here debating these things that we find offensive to us on any level,
Well, I would say too, you bring up the false flag activist thing in some of these groups, and I would say that it kind of also goes both ways, because we did have a president who portrayed himself as straight, so a while back, that
with Big Mike.
Yeah, it's not that I'm causing or that I'm offended by anything, and it's certainly not that I fear any of this. But like you said at the start of the show, I hold to the law, I hold to the Constitution. The standard is Christ. The standard is the Scriptures, and that group, right, whether knowingly or ignorantly, is lawless, right? Even currently and all throughout American history, that specific group in and of itself is completely lawless, right? I'll say it. It used to be punishable by death in all of the states. It's still punishable by life in prison in the state of Michigan. And when we tolerate certain things that the Lord calls an abomination, then we have no standard of right? That is the standard that I have to hold to. I cannot take any other position, and it's not my opinion in the matter. And it's a hard line. It really is, because I take a lot of flack for it. But when you read some of the things earlier on, before this even hit hard in the public light, when you read some of the things that were said out of that community early on, the original instigators who have been promoting that all through the 60s, 70s, and 80s, especially when it hit the congressional record, go look it up. It's called the Homosexual Manifesto, done by Michael Swift, right? Look up what was being said by some of the leaders of the groups at that time. I understand there's tons of other issues that we have to deal with as well, but we can't subvert any issue to deal with one. And I cannot work with lawless individuals. That's what I said at the beginning, right? When you have to make a distinction and weed out those who would infiltrate things, I cannot work with lawless individuals in that sense, because the foundation is wrong. And if we're going to build upon anything, we have to build upon a solid foundation, lest everything we put on top of it crumbles. Right? That's just basic common sense when you're building, especially me in construction. It's basic common sense. So if the foundation is wrong, I want nothing to do with it.
Yep.
And that's that dad energy.
It
You
really
know?
is.
It really is. And I appreciate that. You know, I always appreciate what everybody has to say because we have a lot to learn. We certainly have a lot to learn. All of us do. And you know, my side on this is that, you know, I'm more likely to reach out to people and have discussions and such.
Absolutely, they need to be reached out to. I don't flee from that either. There's plenty of that right in Grand Rapids. Donna, you know, you're in the east side of Grand Rapids a lot, not as much as me. I'm more on the south, you know, and what normal people would call the slums, which I find really degrading. But a lot of people just are willing to live in those situations. But there's so much of that needs to be addressed. We can't flee away from it. These people have to hear the gospel and be slain by the Spirit no less than we were, right? Because it doesn't matter what position of lawlessness somebody is in. They need to hear that reproof. That way they can turn from it and reap the blessings of it that God has ordained for mankind, right?
You just said something pivotal there. Is that because that's where I was going to go next, is that when we depart from the natural law, from God's law, from what he tells us to do, it's a safety net for us. There's so much evil in this world. God, as a good father, tells us what not to do in life because it leads to destruction. There's destruction that comes out of it. When we don't follow what he tells us to do. And you can see that when people do things, and there's all sorts of things that's a slippery slope in life, who we hang out with, you know, even our friends. I mean, there's people you hang out with, you talk to everybody, but if you're taking counsel for someone, like if we sit here and hang out with Biden, who's a fool and a traitor to the nation, or any of the other traitors, we can talk to them and turn them around, because it's a direct attack on the United States of America, on all people. That's where I go. I prioritize things too a little bit, because if we don't get these things handled, which is a direct attack and engineered destruction of people's lives, we got a problem. And it's never going to go away.
Yeah, the laws of God, and I've used this before, the laws of God are a guardrail. They're not a fence. All right, they're not to keep everybody corralled together, though that's a good point to be, right? We shouldn't have all this division, especially denominations across the so-called Christian religion, the churchians, I like to say, but rather we should be all in one accord as the apostles were. But it's a guardrail. You said a safety net, right? It's to prevent us from driving off the cliff. Let me tell you a story once. There's actually a true story out on the West Coast. They had, and if I don't know the area, but there was a really windy road that went up a mountain, right? On one particular curve, they noticed that cars would often go over the side of the cliff and crash at the bottom to their own destruction, right? So a concerned committee, let's talk about these committees again. They got together and said, we need to fix the problem, right? Because there's too many people just flying off this road and dying, right? So instead of simply putting up a warning sign, you know, to let everybody know, hey, destruction may follow ahead if you continue down this road the way you are, or a guardrail, a prevention so that it doesn't happen, they decided to put an ambulance at the bottom of the hill. True story. No joke. Right? That was their solution. And I've got a friend that often says prevention is better than cure. And that's absolutely correct. We're on the backside of a lot of these issues trying to find the cure. But we need to be on the forefront of the issues trying to prevent them, because more and more people are falling into it, and a lot of people are waking up out of it. I'm glad. I love it, right? I absolutely love it when somebody says, oh, that makes sense now, right? Yes, let's do something about it. Not just let's quit talking. If you understand it, let's go. If you don't understand it, but you think it's right, let's go, right? Hand in hand, let's get this done. Simple as that. But we cannot think that we can come up with some new ideas to problems that have existed for centuries, right? Regarding this nation, we have to go back to the old past, like the prophet Jeremiah told the Israelites, right? Jeremiah 6:16. Get back to the old path, wherein is the good way. Any new path we're going to try to take to manage these things is going to end up either in our destruction or with more bureaucracy and regulations over top of us, trying to regulate the problem into a smaller portion to be able to handle. No, I'm saying we need to abolish a lot of this, right? You use the word nullification. That's absolutely correct. You go through, you look at all of this and say, this cannot exist, therefore it doesn't. Done. End of question. Clean out your desks tomorrow. It's done. Go find another job, right?
I think it gets us back to what is the most fundamental. We have to return to the fundamentals. You know, we're talking about the old law in Scripture. God included things like wash your hands. Don't use clay pots to store meat. Things like that. Well, people didn't understand the porosity of clay and how bacteria work. They didn't have microscopes back then. They didn't understand how disease is transmitted. But God said, hey, if you're dirty, get away from everybody else and wash yourself until you're clean. Give yourself some time if you're sick, away from everybody else so you don't transmit that illness. He put things in place that if people simply followed the instruction, regardless of whether they understood the purpose of it, everything would be well. Things like marry one person, that's the only person you get intimate with, and you don't spread disease when you live your life that way. You don't have jealousy. You don't fight each other so much. You know, all this kind of stuff is really, really basic. And even before we had those laws, we had 10 laws. We didn't have to have 100 laws. We had 10. They were very simple. And one of the most basic was to be kind to one another. So where you and Donna were talking about, for example, how you feel about certain people, we're all sinners. And we all know how to be kind to one another.
Yes.
So even though you can discriminate against sin, we're absolutely called upon to do that. We leave the judgment to God, but we do judge what we see. We have to be practiced by reading the law so we can recognize what we can safely be around, and when we need to wash our hands, for example, what kinds of people, I shouldn't say kinds of people, what people we should steer clear of and what people we should embrace when there is a time to do that and when there is a time to protect one another. You know, you have, as a father, you have to protect your family. That includes things like disease, and that includes sin. You don't take your child to the LGBTQ bar. You don't take them to places where people are going to be dancing naked in the library. You protect your children from things that could harm them, and you teach them discernment along the way, and you teach them how to be kind to everyone, because you don't know what is going on in their lives and their path for what God has planned for them or for you. You just be kind to everybody, and it takes care of so many other things.
Well, the United States is supposed to be a melting pot. That's melting. People came here from all over the world, right? And that doesn't mean that the people that are coming to the United States that are drug dealers or part of the cartels, though you have the right to association, is a good idea.
Yeah.
You know, the rules, or the rules that we live by, and our own personal rules that we make for our lives based on what God's taught us, they're important. They're important to use that discernment, because when we do things, though they're allowable, there's a lot of stuff that's allowable. The people that are in our government, they're freely associating with people that are absolutely committing treason. And are they speaking out about it? Not really. They're kind of sort of skimming the issues, but I'm not seeing anybody jumping up and down and saying, hey, this is treason. We got to get rid of this. Instead, they get closed out, they get shut down and such. And the whole organization is a systemic It's systemically corrupt. So when I look at it, what Jesus's words too was, you got to get the plank out of your own eye and make sure that you're discerning on your behavior and what you're doing. And the other thing that I see is that God absolutely loves everyone and doesn't want anyone lost. If we don't, even though we've made some decisions and we have that, if we lose one person because of careless words that have been spoken, I don't really want to be looking at God's face and say, this person failed because my words discouraged them from reaching out to me at their lowest point when they could have been, we need to be there for people, and we need to be there. The United States is hurting terribly. And everyone has been programmed to a certain degree because of the decades of stuff that's gone through, the decades of programming and tearing down of our society and of people's lives, to tell them, oh, do whatever you want. It's the snake tongue of Satan. Do whatever you want to do. It's going to be okay. And they start going down that path. And once you're down it so far, it's a little hard to come back. But the programming has been real effective. We don't know what the laws are. We don't know the processes. The education is only indoctrination, is dumbed down the United States into shut up, sit down, don't make a fuss, don't create a problem, don't be a problem.
Don't read your Bible to your kids.
What's that?
Don't read your Bible to your kids.
Yeah, you're a bad mom and dad if you don't let your kids at 14 years old go to all of these dances and stuff, barely covering anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you what, any parent that does it, and I've heard people say that, well, it's just the style. It's the thing that they do. There's so much pressure. I'm like, guys, your 14-year-old looks like a 20-year-old prostitute when you let them do that. And you're going to get what you have allowed to creep into your home. It's our jobs to raise our children up and also to reach out. Not that it's always going to go the way we think. There's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of access to things that maybe we don't even realize they're getting access to. But you got to do your best. But to reach out to each and every person that's out there and let them see the love of Christ, that they're acceptable to us, and that we love them no matter what they do, that we will still, we're not going to put up with the illegal behavior. I'm going to tell you that. I'll be the first one to say that somebody commits crimes against children, or the R word that you're not supposed to say on TikTok, but I'm going to say it anyway. You have people that are out there, institutional rape, child trafficking, human trafficking. That is a full stop, ain't happening. Choices that people make in their individual lives, whether we agree with them or not, at this point in time, if they're not hurting anybody and they're doing their best self the best way that they know how to do at this point in time, we got a lot bigger issues to focus in on than I don't know about you, but I don't have unlimited time or effort. And I choose to put those into things that affect every single person on the planet and that have torn down the defense of people's rights. We all make mistakes. We all make bad choices. There's not one of us that's been clear of that. But, and building the kingdom, this is the new thing for me, is to really focus on this, because the corruption is so bad governmentally. I think the first question we should ask every morning is to get up and say, God, what do you want me to do to help build your kingdom?
Yeah, and to go around and be kind to people also requires love. We talked about that before, because we're called to reprove sin, right? Mm-hmm. We're said that when our obedience is perfected, that we take revenge on all disobedience, right? I can't tolerate the things that go against God. It is not in my spiritual nature to do. It's in my physical nature, right? Because if he can get away with it, I probably can too. But in my spiritual nature, I cannot. As long as I abide in him, as long as anybody abides in him, you cannot tolerate things that go against God, right? Yeah. So to love these people, and that's anybody. If you commit any sort of lawlessness, and it's going to result in either harm to somebody else or even harm or destruction to yourself, it is absolutely within me to come up and reprove you out of love, that you may understand and repent and turn from it and be reconciled again, right? And that is only because I cannot tolerate seeing somebody walk to their own destruction. If I see somebody walking into a fire, am I not going to stop them? Or if their house is burning down and I know they're in there, am I not going to barge through the front door and go in and at least try to rescue them? I have to. You absolutely have to. And all of those people who we want to put into a lawless category, they're all the same way. But it doesn't matter if they're only affecting themselves, because I love them enough. I have to say something lest they destroy themselves, right? And that should be the cry of everyone, out of love, not out of some self-righteous, whatever you want to call it, right? Hold to the standards and get it done, because you never know the person that God may call to be the next, I don't even know what you want to call it, the next Charles Spurgeon, right? The next Smith Wigglesworth, any one of those guys. You may never know, but he uses us for his will as hands and feet to get the things done that he has called us to do. And so we have to be willing at every moment and not tolerate these things and think that they're minor than the rest of them either. Because I don't know about you, but when Moses had taken the 10 commandments down, I believe there was a reason why they were put in stone. Because if you try to take a hammer and break one commandment, what happens to the other 9?
Ooh.
That stone shatters.
Mm-hmm.
They're all gone. So one is no less than the other. And we need to keep that in mind as well. There are big fish to fry. Absolutely, there are big fish to fry. But most people can't tackle the big fish. You, Donna, you are absolutely all over it. Praise God, there are people out there that can take all the massive information and narrow it down and find the players at the large level. That's not me either. I can find players at local levels, and I can pinpoint things and have enough discernment to walk in, and within a few minutes of talking with somebody on that scale, you can determine where their stand is and how they think about certain situations, and then be able to address it with them throughout several times, once, or even several times of talking with them. The idea is to call men to repentance, call them back to the kingdom that has a king, right? Because Christ can't be king unless he has a kingdom, and his kingdom has laws. And this entire nation is premised on those laws, that righteousness and judgment can be established in the gates, as Isaiah said, and that when the nations, when the judgments of God are within the nations, they shall know peace. If we want it, we have to be willing to do it.
Having the laws are there, as you just said, in order for us to live in peace with each other and our neighbor. So why you have contracts, so that the terms and conditions are laid out, so that everybody can agree on that's taking part in it, so that there's no misunderstandings and people don't get upset and then all of a sudden start going off the rails and attacking each other. That's so important, because that's human nature right there. So I think that, honestly, I think the best thing that can maybe hopefully come out of this entire conversation is the fact that when people designate themselves or others into groups of people, it's a special interest, and it alienates everyone from each other. All of these groups, these special designations, no matter what they are prone to be taken over by evil in order to use them for their evil purposes. When we look at people and we take people as an individual, whatever that may be, and act and treat them the way we would want to be treated as a friend, getting to know them and finding out the struggles in their lives, and hopefully walking through this world together and being maybe something that's taking the rough edges off of each other as we walk through this, so that we do improve and we become more like the invisible character of God, long-suffering and patient, peace, and approach it. I think that this is one of my biggest problems that I've seen in, what did you call it? Churchistan? What did you call it?
Churchianity.
Churchianity. There you go. Churchianity is the judgment of people coming in that looking at people and saying, you don't fulfill my expectations. And it's a big problem. I'll never forget it. We were Messianic, and we were going to all the feast days and such. And I went to a Passover, and I'll never forget this in my life. And it was one of those moments where I really saw the destruction of a human being by a self-righteous religious person who, I might add, it was the religious Jews that killed Jesus. Okay? Wasn't the Romans. It was the religious Jews that killed Jesus. It was the religious. Let's put it there. Jesus sat with prostitutes. Jesus sat with tax collectors. Jesus sat with people and ended up talking with them and teaching them and helping them. You don't just take somebody and whammo. It's just like you'll destroy them in the process. So this woman comes in. I'll never forget it. And she had a woman with her. And so I'm like, hi, how you doing? I'm normally just, I will talk, and I take people for who they are. I don't care what the packaging is. It's irrelevant to me. It's totally irrelevant. And she looked at the gal she brought with her, and she said, "This is such and such," and the normal Christianese type thing where they go like this. I hate that when people do that. That's like somebody from the South saying, "God bless you." You know what they're saying? They're saying basically, "Screw you." That's what they're saying. Like this. They do it. They do it all the time. And she looked at her and said, "Well, this is such and such. We're praying for her." And I'm in this meeting, and you want to know what I said? I went for maximum offensive behavior on this woman who just absolutely humiliated this woman who was there trying to figure life out, and absolutely ostracized her. Well, I looked at her and I said, "Well, fucking pray for me, because I don't have it figured out either." I said, "Why don't you come and sit with us at the table over here with us sinners trying to figure it out?" Because she destroyed this woman publicly. And I'm like, you want to put the target right square on Donna Brandenburg, because I'm not putting up with this stuff. The destruction of people and chasing them away from God in the name of God for self-righteousness. And how many times have we seen people do this? That person, had I not shoved it right in her face, and I will do that, and I don't care where I am, whose presence I'm in, I will go for maximum offense to somebody that is destroying a human being because they see the sin in their lives but refuse to acknowledge it in their own. Because
that is the difference right there. And the world unfortunately sees there's a difference between love and hate, right? It's in the motives that we do it in. But even doing it out of love, oftentimes you find out how or who people are really quick. If you're doing it with the right reasons, the world still calls it hate, right? Understand that. I've been called that numerous times on little things that I try to coach people and correct them in. But it's not that I'm saying I'm better than you. It's saying that, hey, I was there, right? I understand where this is coming from. And let me tell you how it was destroying me and who got me out of it. Right?
That's a beautiful way to do it.
And it's a father concept, That's what God does to us. He says, hey, don't go to the right or to the left. Stay on the path I got for you, because you'll get hurt otherwise. I did a Substack on children. And when I studied into the Bible, the word children or child, very little does it actually represent a young person. It usually represents people in a spiritual sense. My children, including the part about the millstone. It's not talking about the little children needing physical protection. It's about spiritual protection. And so I'm sitting here thinking about, imagine that you're in a building and it collapses and you find yourself in a small space surrounded by a bunch of children. You got children of different races. You got children that identify as a cat, or whatever it is. You got children who are different than you. You're going to still try to protect those children. You're going to try to get every single one of them out. You will encourage them to dig in the hole with you to go toward the light so that you can get every single one of them out of there. You're not going to say, oh, you need to stay behind, or you're going last because you're black, or you think you're a cat, or you think you're a different gender, or your name is not recognizable to me because you're from a different culture. Whatever it is, you're going to get every single one of them out because you have a call of duty. That's a physical representation of a spiritual matter. These are all children of God. And
Yes.
if you're kind to every single person around you, and you try to correct them when you see them straying off the path they should be on, and you do it with love instead of making faces, or not cringing because they smell funny, things like that. You do it entirely with love, and you treat them according to God's word. We'll get more people through that narrow gate. You can climb out of that hole together, going toward the light. Ayo.
That's well said, and every single person. I mean, what is amazing to me is how when we grow spiritually, it's kind of like this with people in our lives. We'll grow a little bit, and all of a sudden we may fall or have a struggle with something.
Yep.
And hopefully somebody will grab us by the hand and say, I'm here to help, and walk forward, and then reevaluate the situation and try to find the crux of the problem so it doesn't get repeated, so that person is hurt again. You don't want them to go back into a situation where they're further hurt or damaged or depressed or something. We're here to help. And when we can discern the problem, we have a very, almost like a surgeon's scalpel to cut out those things, and the things that we see with our eyes that we think are the problems are rarely the problem. Problem usually goes back to something that we have no idea, and we're seeing the result of a problem. You can't fix it until you go into what was the origin of the problem, no matter what it is, whether it's somebody who constantly makes bad financial decisions, or goes back, or has, which is going to be self-destructive, okay? Or can't hold a job, or can't do this or that. There's always something that we don't know. And as Jesus said, you got to walk in their shoes to know exactly what's going on. So even our judgments on some of these things are flawed, because it still comes through our own lens. We can get closer by sticking, making sure we know the Bible and we know the law to be a help to this world. We're here to be a help. Only one that can save me or any of us out there is Jesus Christ, who looks at us, who came here and saw us in our sin, in our failings, as a father, knowing we don't know how to walk like he does. We're not old enough. We're not strong enough. We're practicing. And he looks at us and says, yeah, Donna Brandenburg, you're a failure. God, he's got the right to say that about me. And I would say, yes, I am. So help me to be more like you. I am a child of God. And that means a child is learning to walk. And we're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way. And hopefully in God's playground here of life, we look at each other and say, hey, child of God, let this thing get figured out. But you know what? The only way that we get out of this is by accepting the gift of God. And that's him being our Father, and salvation, where he grabs us and helps us, forgives us of what we've done wrong, and says, yeah, you're kind of a schmuck, but you know what? I love you the way you are.
And I could fill the gap.
And yes. And to all of you Christians out there who are true believers, you see somebody doing this kind of nonsense in the name of God to somebody that did it to that woman that was in that meeting, step in there and let them attack you. If you're strong spiritually, you will step up and you will take those attacks and protect someone who is weaker and is learning. And shame those people into a smoldering heap of regret, going after people that need the help, not need the condemnation.
Yeah. Just like Paul told the Galatians, and I'll end with this because I probably ought to get to work at some point today.
Oh, I love
like
this. This is a great conversation. DNR went all the pieces, but go ahead.
Yeah. Paul told the Galatians in Galatians 6, he said, "Brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, being more mature, you have more knowledge, you've set the foundation, your building blocks, right, all the way up. Ye which are spiritual, restore such an one. Call them out, help them out, get them out of it. In the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted."
There you go.
Right? Don't jump into the party with them to try to get them out.
Yes.
Because you're going to fall to the same temptations. But be there as the hand to help call them out of it. Right?
Beautifully
Don't be distracted by it.
Mm-hmm.
Be a friend. Treat them the way that you would want to be treated. If you got into something that ended up being really bad, that's not the time to condemn people. That's the time to grab them by the hand and say, okay, let's figure this out and how to get us out. And that's what we're going to have to do with the nation. I mean, look at what has happened to the nation with all of the corporate welfare, the regular welfare, all of the entitlements that are out there. If you destroyed the system that's set up to take us captive and just boom, it's gone in one day, you're going to have a lot of people that are in big trouble because they don't even know how to live without being a baby bird in a cage having food dropped in their mouths. What are they going to do? They're going to be
lost, better get active.
Lost, scared, and alone. And to you Christians out there, we are here to do the work of God. We are here to watch people and, yes, call it out. Analyze it. This is a problem, huge problem. How are you going to help getting us out of this? How are you going to help if every single person who's committed treason in this government gets dismissed and charged for the crimes they committed? Who's going to take their place? Who's going to do the work of the kingdom of God to be a help in a very lost world that's been infiltrated every corner by evil, unspeakable evil that most people can't even stand to watch. If you can't stand to watch what happens to these kids or what will happen to a person who has stepped out against it, being skinned alive or whatever else they do. I've seen it. It happens. And you know what? If we can't get in there into the worst part of this and root out this evil and corruption, get out of the way.
Find some other way to support the people who will.
And realize that there needs to be some changes that are going to be uncomfortable. That's saying it in a very sanitized way. But I think right now, if we all focus on helping our communities at the very base level of preparing for a total collapse, we're trying to educate people here. You cannot look at the financial system and say, oh yeah, this is going to go on forever. We're going to have another 100 years of this. It isn't going to happen.
I shared a video.
What's that?
I shared a video this morning from California. There's at least a couple of guys in a home and with a lot of big glass windows, and the fire is all around. I can't imagine that they got it out because they took their phone or their camera with them and escaped. I don't know that these people could possibly get out of that situation alive. It's horrifying. But they're standing around and cussing occasionally. But someone commented, and I wanted to know if these people, there was any other information about what happened after they sent this video into the internet. And somebody sent that meme where there's a little character in the middle of a fire going, "This is fine." That's what I have in mind listening to what you're saying, Donna. There are people who are literally sitting around going, "This is fine," while all this other stuff happens around us. And it's just as dangerous. and they just can't see it. And it's like, no, you need to get out. You need to do something. You need to get your hose or something,
The discernment is that it is.
I've got to go, guys.
All right. That one more
Thanks,
thing, and then
Bill.
we'll go. One more thing. Remember that our battle isn't with the people around us per se. It's with principalities and powers. We're in a spiritual war. It starts with prayer and asking God into every single situation. You don't have to view people being afraid or in disgust or in judgment because you don't agree with the choices they're making in life. Remember, it's principalities and powers that are the problem, and help haul people out that have been taken captive by the forces of evil. That is our job right now. And you don't do it by kicking them. You don't do it by calling them names. You get in there and be a friend and treat them like you would want to be treated. And I think that's important. So let's say a quick prayer here. This is what a great DNR episode. Didn't even talk about, what a great show. So Bill, you want to pray for us?
Sure.
Okay.
Father, again, we thank you for the time to be able to come in fellowship and the time spent together. And thank you for the information that's been brought forth and the continual patriots, Father, that you bring up, not only to restore the nation, Father, but to continue to promote the kingdom as well. Father, we know that patriots are the ones who will uphold the dying laws of a nation and seek to restore it, not just continue status quo. And Father, we seek to be those individuals, and we ask that you would equip us to be so. And Father, even if everything around us collapses as we see the nations that came before us, if the people are not able to be the law we're called to be, Father, I ask that you would give your people the strength and the mercy to make it through it. Not only that, but the grace and the power to be the light, to be the beacon of hope for the rest of the world, Father. If it be so, send me. And Father, I ask that be the cry of each one of us here, that you would equip your individual servants to do that which is necessary throughout the next weeks and months and potentially years, Father. Give us discernment, fill us with the Spirit, and eliminate everything in our lives that stand against that. And in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys, thank you so much for being on today, and thank you for every single person. Curtis Clark had put out a whole bunch of stuff here, and if you want to leave, Bill, that's great. I'm going to run through his stuff because he's got some really good points. In the 1760s, the British started retracting the original charters that the colonists used to lead the self-governance at the local level. The British issued new charters that usurped local control. Local control and enabled taxes to be imposed upon the colonists. The history was hidden. The new charters controlled the municipal corporations. Today it is the platform of the framework that makes general law counties. We need to rediscover our history in the original charters. Boston Tea Party and increased taxes was only half the problem before 1776. The revoked charters was the other half. Eric Prince created a private army on U.S. soil and contracted with the federal government. Let that sink in. They intend on including trees tied into deeds, much like mineral rights and their carbon credits. Who appoints the director of the Department of Natural Resources, which we went through it, and why and when have the countless relinquished control of portions of their territory to a state agency? Who is on the trust fund board? And I said that was my next question. Are they affiliated with the Global Leaders Alliance of Michigan? Jason Rowe is with the Globalist Group, and he is a paid consultant for the MIGOP. Bedrock is Dan Gilbert of Detroit. He is partnered with the World Economic Forum. Dan Gilbert, and there's another guy there that's all involved in that. I'll think of it in a minute. But absolutely, the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition is actually a name which I call the Global Leaders Alliance of Michigan. Very well said, and thank you for the comments there, as well as so many others. Leb and Charlotte have made some, and so have Eric out there. So I want to call you out there. And Shalimar, one that won't allow the milk to be taken or the farm animals for the farm animals. So there you go. Any last words, guys?
I guess, some of the strongest Christians that I know are the ones that have screwed up the most and turned around. And I think that's something to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you what, the whole LGBTQ thing, we need to talk about that more, because I'm going to tell you, I've gone to a lot of the log cabin events, and I'm going to tell you, they are the ones that are absolutely just unrelenting on talking about human trafficking and child trafficking. They are speaking out on this so strongly that I haven't heard any other group that has spoken out as absolutely steadfast on this issue as I have the people from the log cabin. And it's real easy to accuse people of things of which they are not guilty of. Not saying that that everything hasn't been infiltrated. That's not what I'm saying. But on an individual basis, we need to be very careful with our words. And I feel really strongly about that, because we may be fighting the people that are actually trying to help.
All children of God. We got to start treating each other that way the best we can. And I'm glad he hit the scripture he did, because it's hard to come up with it on our own. Those words were very good. Isn't the right word? Very helpful to the conversation. Very appropriate. And I hope people carry forward those and other scriptures, because that's what matters most. Where, as I said, he fills the gap, but that's just one way to put it. Christ covers the imperfections that can bring us to perfection. We can't be perfect. He was the only one that was and is, and thankfully he still is, and he can cover the imperfections that we have. If we believe that, we have a duty and obligation and should have a trust that he will, and continue to strive to meet that, and humble ourselves. Hey, he's there for us. Why are we turning the other direction? He sacrificed so much. He met death and defeated it for us. And for us to trample on his blood and say, well, I don't need that, I'm going to go the other direction, is wasteful and horrible in so many ways. Instead, we should really try to follow in his footsteps to the best of our ability and trust that he'll cover the gap.
Well, I think part of it is because there's so many people that claim to be Christian, and they've turned God into just this tyrant. That's how they present God, as a tyrant, an uncaring tyrant, because they're legalists. Legalist is you follow the rules, you go to heaven. That's a lie. That is absolutely a lie from hell. And the battle in Christendom has always been that way. It's between legalism and grace and mercy, a gift from God, accepting us and knowing that we're sinners saved by, we're practicing and we're not getting it right. We were born into sin, and he accepts us anyway. You cannot work for your salvation. It doesn't work. It is a gift. No matter what you do, you're going to do some things right and some things wrong. And I think that, a lot of people want to look at the balance scales and say, I did this wrong, but I did all these other things that were right. So I'm justified because I've justified myself in my own mind on my own behavior. No, it's probably good to accept the fact that we're flawed, confront those, try to change, try to be a better person, and realize that if we don't get it right, it's a gift from God. The relationship with him, we can go to the mercy seat of Christ. We have direct access to God, and he forgives us and says, just have to ask him. Sorry, God, screwed up on this. Trying to get it figured out. Don't have all the answers. Walking down the path, doing my best out here, but we don't have it all right. And he's going to forgive us when we ask him and accept his gift of salvation in Christ. He paid the price. You don't have to pay the price anymore. Don't re-crucify him. He already paid the price. It's all he can do. The most he can give, the most he's done. It's done. It's finished. Just accept the gift and you're good. That's it. Pretty simple.
Yep.
And then do your best. Do your best. And he's going to walk you through this thing called life. He'll be there. He'll talk to you. He'll even tell you. He'll guide you. He'll give you everything you need. Just turn to him and watch things change. It's miraculous. It's wonderful. And it's amazing. It's an amazing life. Doesn't mean things aren't going to be rough. It means that you're going to have problems. You're just going to deal with them a little better. And you'll look back and go, wow, even the problems taught me something that was valuable, because God takes everything good and everything that evil means for bad. He turns it around and turns it into something beautiful, like manure on the garden. Gives us something to grow from and not beat ourselves up the rest of our lives. The depression that people have right now and the isolation. It's like, oh yeah, you probably did screw up. Okay, you screwed up, so did I, so have everybody else. You're not special, you're not perfect. The only one that was Jesus, and he didn't throw a stone. So yeah, say you screwed up. It's not a bad thing to admit it. Screwed up. Guess I'm not going to repeat that again. That was a bad choice. And ask for forgiveness. Sorry, God, screwed that one up. Not going to repeat it again. I'm going to be smarter in the next 10 seconds and not repeat something bad that I did.
And how are we going to call people to follow Christ if we refuse to even talk to the tax collectors, the prostitutes, the adulterers, go and sin no more? How would that have ever happened if we refuse to talk to people, if we're going to follow that example?
Yeah, those people. Who are those people?
Exactly.
There are no those people. There is no those people.
Mm-hmm.
We are human beings, and we all are children of God.
And those people, that's always a fear-based thing too, because they're separate from us, and I need to fear them. God takes away the fear. I've been surprised lately, and I'm surprised that I'm surprised, because I come across people that I know are more awake and aware than so many others. And then they'll say something like, well, I'm just afraid that this and that, earthly matter, politics, and, they're going to do something to Trump. And it's like, okay, and like, you're worried about that? Like, I'm just in a different place with how I look at the political narratives. And I've been trying to put that out and carrying the Riveter a lot lately. What are the details doesn't matter as much as recognizing that you're being told what they want you to hear about a story. What is the story that they're trying to tell? Examine that. And if you're doing this from a 10,000-foot view, you recognize that it's a story. And then even if there is some reality in there and there is some harm being done, you look at it more from a godly perspective, because you're coming at it without fear. How is this going to affect you in your personal life? If it doesn't, then there's even less reason to fear. Well, gangs of Chinese militants could be coming across the Canadian border and invading. Okay, well, if that happens, what are you going to do about it? Are you okay? With God? Then you've got nothing to worry about. Are you armed? Can you defend yourself? If you feel like you're not quite ready with that, then do something, but don't come at everything from a point of fear. And if you trust God, you have nothing to worry about. Look at things from a higher perspective instead of focusing in on, the driver of the Tesla and what that story. There's so many details there. Don't make any sense. I can't even figure out what the narratives are supposed to be with that story, and I'm amused by it. It just doesn't make any sense, and I can't figure out what the story is supposed to be. And I think maybe that's telling me that the media haven't even got a handle on it. That's a good thing. I think what's happening with Greenland and Canada is, I think, an encouragement in part of the global people. Hey guys, we're starting to do something right in America. What would it be like if you started to do something right where you live, in Greenland, in Canada, in England, in France? They're trying. People are trying, but maybe they needed a little bit more encouragement right now, because he's pushing this hard, this concept of Canada being a state and Greenland being a part of America. It's giving them a reason to dream and turn around and tell their buddies hey, what if? Maybe there's something we can do. And let's restore our sovereignty. Let's get our independence. Hey, America did it. Let's try to do better here. I think that's a big part of that story. Instead of looking at all the details of China and minerals and land and whether we're going to use the military here or there and what's the name of it and what would it do to the political parties and the electoral college here if we had Canada as part of the states. None of that really matters. Can we as a people do the things that we talked about today? And when I say we, the people, I'm talking worldwide. Can we all look to God and then look to each other and say, can we do what is right? The way things are. And if we can't, what do we need to do to fix that so that we can focus on what is right and good?
Can we listen to God? Can we ask him, what do you want us to do today? There's a million directions we can go, and we're going to screw it up every time. We'll waste all the time getting distracted by these shiny things. Yes. What do you want me to do today? And if he says nothing, sit down. It's like we don't have to be running around and wasting all this time and such. Sometimes just sitting. And maybe it's just having a mental health day, and sitting there and praising God and listening to music and decelerating everything that's going on around us. Maybe it is to run into something and be helped. Maybe we should all just make a batch of cookies and share them with our neighbors today and say, you know what? I care about you. And I made these cookies and I thought you'd like these cookies today. Something as simple as that can change the entire world right there. And, we were talking about teaching. I wanted to let you know this, Karen, and even though we're still on, I'm going to talk about, I think I'm going to do classes this summer. I'm going to do classes because I've been really focused in on how people can provide their own food in a small space, such as even an apartment or a home, and also heating sources if things fall apart, as well as water and such. But I started writing it out last night. And I think I'm going to do some gatherings this summer and teach people, like, I taught you the digital canner stuff. There's all sorts of things that just sitting there and just like we're sitting with somebody who knows a subject. And there's lots of people who know lots of subjects. And we should just like sit there like a little kid and watch what they do and learn from them and do it with them. Like whether it's welding or whether it's cooking or whether it's learning to manage a business or something like that. If you walk with somebody, and isn't that what the Holy Spirit does? He's a paraclete. That means comes alongside and you walk together. You don't sit there, and this is the problem with our government. You do this and you do this and you do this, and I'm going to tell you what to do. That's not how it works. You jump in the trenches with people and you work together. So I don't know. I guess enough said right there. But this was actually a great show, and I'm glad we got to talk about some of these issues because these are the hard issues that we're going to have to talk about, bringing our nation back together.
Yep. It's not going to be easy, that's for sure. And there's going to be a lot of frustration. I know we've you and I and others, we have moments where we're so frustrated because it seems like the people around us just don't get it. Why are so many people stupid? Like, okay, Karen, just recognize that God gave you maybe a little bit more intelligence than other people. Maybe you're in a different place in your critical thinking experience in life.
And maybe we're dumber than we think we are.
And there's so many people that are smarter than me and further along than me. So again, we're all children of God and we're all in their own place. And that's where I have to go. Like, okay, there's somebody who has it better than me and there's somebody who has it worse. So I should not be so frustrated, And I try not to get too emotional about a lot of stuff, but I texted you the other day, hey, in case you weren't watching like I was. And by the way, Fox, you mentioned Fox. Fox News was the only local news station that covered the electoral count. C-SPAN and Fox were the only ones on my channels that I saw were doing it. ABC, CBS, and NBC did not want us to remember that Trump was elected. So that kind of matters too. You have to look at what they're not telling you. But I'm
still
sitting
trying
at
to
home.
process the split votes in the states, which is unlawful. I'm still trying to process it. And they're trying to get us to do a democratic process where it's not representational. It's not a constitutional republic. And I've dug up something that set the precedence in how many states have actually decided to go to a democratic process, which means that all the votes from the state the electors don't go from the state anymore. And they proved it. I was listening. I don't know if you were listening. I was listening to it and I was like, what just happened?
It just, watching this, and I'm like, I know it was a shelection. I know it's all fake. I know it's all rigged. I know it's all a show. I know the last one was entirely fake. I know that, the Trump that I'm seeing is, on a daily basis, the various versions are not real Trump. I don't know what to make of that, but there's nothing I can do about it. But there was a moment where I felt a relief and a joy, and I was a little emotionally overwhelmed for a moment, and I'm like, okay, get a grip on yourself, because this is kind of silly. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to accept it as a win. I'm going to accept it in a joyful, victorious kind of way, because I know that everybody else in the country who also participated in that vote and cast a ballot with Trump's name on it are sitting at home or going to work, like I was sitting at home, and they're celebrating today. They feel a sense of relief and a hope that they haven't had in a long time. And I'm going to accept that and feel that joy of the rest of my countrymen and go, okay, what are they going to do in the next couple of weeks? I don't know. I'm okay.
Even Kamala looked relieved. Did you look at her face? She was like, oh, finally done. You gotta wonder if she's just an actress, because she looked like she was like, thank God. That's why I looked at her face, and I was like, she's happy he won.
I thought she looked like she was gonna throw up or cry, one of the two, or maybe both. And also, let me tell you something I didn't put out there, but one of my followers pointed it out to me. I didn't catch it. Kamala put out a video before the inauguration process, the electoral count process. And it was a speech that was pre-recorded. And what she noticed, which I didn't, because I put it on fast speed because I couldn't stand it. And I wanted to hear what she had to say, but as fast as possible. The digital recording had two angles, one from the front, one from like 45-degree angle, and it was, I don't know, maybe a couple minutes. That was a very similar production to the ones that Trump has done, which are typically 3 to 4 minutes. And I know he has pre-recorded more than one on the same day, but they were released days later, immediately after a topic became newsworthy. So he was recording something that wasn't news yet, or there was a digital creation. I don't know if it's really him, all that. But the production of the video itself looked remarkably similar to the ones that Trump had put out previously. And I've never seen that with Biden or Harris before. So I just found that to be interesting. Thought I would share, make what you will of it. Again, we are watching a show.
We're watching a show. Question everything. Enjoy the popcorn. Trust God. Don't lose your mind. Do what you can.
I watched there's a new show by Ghost of Patrick Henry is his name. I'm not as familiar with him, but I'm learning to be. He's one of the Badlands media guys. And he started a new show the other day. The Book of Trump is what he's calling this. And The first episode was about Trump's involvement in the World Wrestling Federation and so on. There's a history there. I never paid a whole lot of attention to that in my youth. I knew who Hulk Hogan was. You know, he came into my world enough. I had a idea who he was, and I knew that it was fake wrestling stuff. But I didn't know anything else about it. I didn't really know a lot about Trump's history with it, but he went through it all and covered the concept that Trump knows all about, this concept of kayfabe. He knows how to create drama, when to tell the truth and come out of character, and when to be in fighter character, good guy character, bad guy character. And he uses all of that really, really well, like a show. So when I say, you know, we're watching a show, that particular show the other day on Rumble was really interesting to me because it put it in a little bit more light of the show, the entertainment value that Trump is very skilled at.
Yeah.
Or somebody is.
He drags things out of the dark, and he uses things to bait people and to bring it in the light so that we start asking questions.
Yes.
That's the most valuable thing that he does, is educating people and getting us to not take things at face value, but to ask questions. With that said, it looks like Ralph needs to go. And you good with ending it now, Karen?
Yep.
Okay, so there we go, boys and girls. Another wonderful show here in Brandenburg News Network, and we're gonna go to our days because this isn't a job. None of us get paid for this. We're just here. So, and we're here for you, right? So, with that said, God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great day. Starts here and here. And because I have to say it, go to BrandenburgForGovernor.com because I'm the best non-conceder who's ever non-conceded in the history of the United States of America. And I want to have a discussion with the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, cowboy boots someday on this whole conceding thing and or not conceding. So anyhow, know that you're very much loved and that there's nothing wrong with you that isn't wrong with the rest of us. We're all in this together. And there's always answers, and God always provides the way when there seems to be no way. Just turn to him. Even if you think that things that you're not worth, talking to him, or that there's a problem talking, just turn to him. You're going to be surprised at what he's really like and how much he does love you. So go into this day, know that you're precious beyond all words, that you are loved, that there's lots of us here that love you, no matter who you are, no matter what the packaging is. We don't care. Just, hopefully we'll all spend eternity together in the presence of God our Father, and have a great day. See you tomorrow. I'm going to be doing taping something tonight. We may come back on live for a little bit. I might. But otherwise, I'm really interested to hear what this guy has to say. I listened to his entire presentation, and I was just completely floored in the fact that his claims that the Canadian government is completely and totally illegitimate, and so is the United States government, and what the process was to get here. So have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow at 9. See you, Ralph. See you, Karen.
See ya.
See ya.